Notation cleanliness. This section is geared towards those of you who are interested in continuing your musical studies beyond this class, and it's especially geared for any of you who are interested in becoming composers or arrangers or orchestrators, anyone who has to write musical notation to be read by other humans for a living. So this is also the most challenging section of the entire textbook. And to be clear about that, in the 5+ years teaching this course, I've never had a student who was able to get through this entire section flawlessly without any sort of guidance on my part. So if you want a big challenge, you can pause the video right now and see if you can work out all of the correct answers. Now, what I'm going to do is to give a few hints at the outset for those of you who want them, and then I will pause just for a moment and then work through each of them in turn. The whole point of this section, just to put it in context, is if you're creating music and you want other people to perform your music from notation, you want to have your score, your musical writing, reflect all of the conventions and the musical grammatical rules that are in place. You want performers to be able to look at your music and understand it at first glance, and if that's the case, then you will get a successful performance. If you don't have all your ducks in a row, if you don't cross your T's and dot your I's in musical terms, then you might have kind of a disastrous reading, and the piece won't sound anything like what you imagined, simply because of a lack of notation cleanliness. So that's the context. Here are a couple of hints and little reminders to help you get started with this. So one principle you might already be aware of, we've covered this, I think, in passing a little bit, is that when you're writing rhythms, you want to group things together that add up to one beat. So for instance, if you're in 3/4 time, you can accommodate as many as 12 16th notes in each measure. Each 16th note is 0.25 of a beat. Therefore, 4 of them grouped together give you one full beat. So when you write music in 3/4 with 16th notes, this is the proper way to do it. So not only does each grouping add up to one beat, but when you look at the piece of music, you can immediately tell that that's beat 1, that's beat 2, and that's beat 3. It's not obscured from the performer. So that makes it easier to read. Now, you can follow this same logic if you have eighth notes, for instance, in 3/4 time. Each eighth note is 0.5 of a beat, so you can pair them up. 2 of them together add up to one beat, and you can very clearly see beat 1, beat 2, and beat 3. Now, one small exception to this is when you're in 4/4 time. Let's say you have eighth notes in 4/4 time. Following the rules that we just established, you would expect that the eighth notes would appear in pairs, and oftentimes they do, like that's beat 1, that's beat 2, that's beat 3, that's beat 4. But since 4/4 is such an easy time signature, it's the most commonly encountered time signature, actually, you'll frequently see eighth notes grouped in 4s. This does not really obscure the meter of the piece. Like, you can still very easily tell that that's beat 1, that's beat 3, and yeah, you can also tell that that's 2 and that's 4. So in that case, it's actually okay to slightly go against the principle. But in general, that principle holds. Now, here's another tip. This is something that you, again, may have noticed going through the textbook, but may not have explicitly practiced. And that's whenever you're writing notes on the staff. Let's say you've got a mixture of high notes and low notes. If you have a note that's on the middle line, the third line of the staff, or higher, then its stem goes down and it connects to the note head on the left. So down, 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 down. However, if you have a note towards the bottom of the staff, so on the second space or lower, its stem is going to go up and it's going to connect on the right side of the note head. So for instance, high note up here, stem goes down, connects to the left. Low note down here, stem goes up. If you're right in the middle, just by convention, the stem goes down. Now, if you have groupings of notes that you want to beam together, how do you decide whether the stems go up or down? Well, sometimes it's going to be very easy. Let's say you wanted to group, let's do these 4 actually, these 4 notes together as 16th notes. Well, they're all low on the staff, so their stems are all going to go up, and you're going to connect them like so. Now, imagine, though, if you have a mixture. Let's say you have this set of notes. on their own, like this stem would go up, this stem would go up, this stem would go down, that stem would go down, but we can't really do that, right? It would look really fussy if we tried to accommodate each one. Like we would have to do that and that and that and that. And then what would we do? Would we try to somehow mangle a pair of 16th note beams to connect them? No, of course we don't do that. So what we do instead, given those notes, is we pick the one that's furthest from the middle. That is the one that's furthest, vertically speaking, from the middle line of the staff. And that note is going to determine the direction for all of the stems. So here, this note, this G, the first note, is the furthest from the middle if you think just vertically. And its stem on its own would go up. Therefore, all of the notes are going to have an up stem. So that's how you would group those four together. So that's a bit of notation advice. One other hint that I'll give is just remember from the previous section about staccato notes and accents and those sorts of things. In general, you want to put those symbols on the note head side as opposed to the stem side. So that does it for the hints. I'm going to pause just for a moment, and then we will proceed to work out each of these problems one at a time. Okay, first one. And again, you are playing the role of a musical editor. You're trying to preserve the intent of this maybe inspired, but certainly notationally misguided composer. You're trying to preserve as much as possible, but then make the notation actually make more sense in your correction. So here we've got treble clef. That's fine, but what about this key signature? It looks like 4 flats, but it's B flat, E flat, F flat, D flat. No, that's not right. They probably meant B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. They probably meant just the usual 4 flats key signature. Common time, that's fine. That's the little C symbol. Here we have 4 eighth notes beamed together, but we're in 4/4 or common time. That's okay. But notice the staccatos. They're on the wrong side. They need to go up here. That way performers can see them as they're reading the notes. They don't have to look all the way down to find, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be performing these detached. Same thing over here with the slur. Stems look okay, but the slur needs to go up there. So that is all in order now. Let's go on to the next one. Treble clef. Oh, wait a second. We've got a time signature before key signature. That's backwards. We should have a key signature first. If you look at all of your pieces in the back of the book, it's always the key signature that comes first. That's the way to do it. Then your time signature, 3/4. That looks fine. We've got 2 eighth notes. Those are okay, right? 2 of them add up to 1 beat in this time signature. We've got staccatos. Those are in the right place. That's okay. But what about this last note? Here we have a whole note, which is worth 4 beats. But wait a second. We only have 3 beats in every measure. So maybe they just wanted this note to last an entire measure. So if that's the case, then we need to write a dotted half note because that adds up, or that constitutes 3 beats. You could have also tied it to a quarter note if you wanted to preserve the 4 counts. But either way is fine. Okay, so we fixed a few things there. Let's go on to the next one. Treble clef looks okay. Key signature looks good. 3/6. I've never seen that time signature. That one doesn't exist. You can't actually have a 6 on the bottom. You can only have, a 2, a 4, an 8, a 16, theoretically a 1. Those kinds of numbers, the powers of 2. So we're going to hold off on that. Maybe we can reverse engineer what time signature they intended by looking at the notes. So here are the notes that they actually wrote. And is there a way that we can make sense of this? Well, these are 3 eighth notes grouped together. Maybe we could group these together. Oh, what if we did this? What if we had 3 eighth notes, and I'm using down stems there, 3 eighth notes. Doesn't that look a little bit like 6/8 time, where you have, for instance, 1 enda, 2 enda as your counting system? So yeah, we could totally guess that maybe they intended this to be in 6/8 time. Pardon me, get a smaller eraser. So we'll no longer need that. And if we go on to the next measure, a dotted half note is equivalent to 6/8 notes, actually. It's equivalent to an entire measure of 6/8, so that's actually okay. Others of you who didn't do the 6/8 may have done a 3/4 time signature, in which case you would group your eighth notes differently. You would have 3 groups of 2 eighth notes if you decided to go in that direction. That's also possible. You're just guessing at this point, right? Next one, treble clef, key signature okay, time signature okay. But what's this first note? It looks like it's above the staff, but it doesn't have a ledger line. What is that? Is that supposed to be a G, or is it an A with the ledger line missing? Like, we don't really know. I'm going to guess maybe that it was a G and they just placed it a little bit too high. Stem goes down. There's an F, or in fact an F sharp. This one's a high note, so its stem should go down. This stem should go down as well. And over here we have a dynamic marking that's just M, which, if you remember from the previous section, it just means like moderately or somewhat. Well, moderately what? Somewhat what? So I'm going to guess maybe they meant somewhat loud. So mezzo forte, you could have guessed mezzo piano as well. But the point is, you need to pick one of those dynamic markings. Otherwise, it looks good. Okay, let's skip this top one for the time being because it's the most difficult of the bunch. Let's go on to this one. What's going on with this treble clef? Didn't they intend it to look like that? That's where it's supposed to go. It's not supposed to be down here. Funky key signature. It looks like it's 4 sharps, but as if it were notated in the bass clef. So let's assume that maybe they wanted treble clef, and these are the proper sharps: F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. Time signature is fine. Looks like the beaming is okay, right? We've got 2 eighth notes, 2 eighth notes. They each of those groups adds up to 1 beat. That's fine. But what about the direction? Well, here, when you have a tie between, and I should emphasize, a tie in the sense that the 2 notes are equally far apart from the center line. Whenever you have a tie like that, the down stem direction wins out. So it's going to look like that. Here, though, these are both notes that are low on the staff, so stems go up, and then this one is fine here. And that all adds up to 3 beats. That's okay. Actually, let's do the top one next. It is difficult, but this one at the bottom is difficult in different ways. So at the top, we've got treble clef. That's fine. Key signature, fine. 2/4, fine. Let's tackle maybe the dynamics first. Piano, but then gets softer and softer until you hit forte. Now, it looks like it might be backwards. What if we kept the piano here, but then we did the crescendo to forte? That makes much more sense, right? Because forte is loud, piano is soft. Now, let's look at the rhythm itself. Can you figure out where beats 1 and 2 are? Well, 1 is going to be there, but where the heck is 2? Like, is 2, like, is it there, or is it there, or is it actually, isn't it kind of in the middle? So we need to rewrite this rhythm so the performer can actually see where beat 2 happens. Now, this one's going to require a little bit of imagination. If you were to, let's say, underline with our counts, just as we always do, and let me clear this off. We've already fixed a few of these things. If you were to dissect this in terms of our counting system, you'd realize, okay, well, we're in 2/4, we have 16th notes, so we need the 1E and a 2E and a counting system. So you'd write it out like this, right? 16th note gets 0.25. This one is 0.5. This next one, this next 8th note, is 0.5, and it's actually straddling beat 1 and beat 2. Then this one is 0.25, and this one is 0.5. So this is presumably what the composer intended. Now, how can we rewrite that so that we can see where beat 2 is? Well, what if we do it this way? I'm going to do it over to the right. 1E and A. So we could write a 16th note, followed by an 8th note, followed by a 16th note, which we're going to tie to another 16th note that begins a new grouping. And then we get that, then we get another 16th note, and then we get an 8th note. So I'm going to write it out, and then I'm going to show you exactly how this works. So we said that ultimately we have a 0.25, a 0.5, a 0.5, a 0.25, and a 0.5. That's what we're assuming is correct. What do we have over here? We have, indeed, a 0.25, a 0.5. That's easy. Check it out. We've got a 0.5 here because those two 16th notes are tied together. Then we have a 0.25, and then we have a 0.5. So we have preserved all of the values, and now we can see that that's beat 1 and that's beat 2. So pretty crafty, right? Last one, and that fixes everything in that example. So this last one, also a little bit tricky. treble clef looks okay. Key signature looks okay. Time signature looks okay. But what about the rhythm here? We got 5 eighth notes and then a single eighth note. We're just in common time. We're just in 4/4, so we shouldn't have any of these funky beamings. We shouldn't be grouping 5 things together. Maybe we could group 4 things together. What if we did that? So 4 eighth notes together. That looks fine. And then we have 2 more eighth notes, like this one here and this one there. We could beam those together, right? So one of them is, actually they're both, at the moment, they're D sharps. And then you have here at the end just a D natural quarter note. So you might think, oh, we're all done. Well, that's still not good enough. If you were really clever, you realized that D sharp is the same note on the piano as E flat, which is already in the key signature. So what you have written out is you have this kind of fussy notation where there's a sharp on a D and then immediately there's a natural. What if you did this? What if you just reinterpreted that D sharp as an E flat? Then you'd save yourself not only this sharp, but also this natural. So check it out. I'm going to do this over to the right. Instead of 2 D sharps and a D natural, what if you did this? Those are 2 E flats, same pitch on the piano keyboard, and a regular D. Now you don't even have to use any accidentals. Everything is just baked into the key signature. So that is your final answer for the last one.